With much of daily life moved online, the coronavirus pandemic dramatically exposed the digital divide. The digital divide is a gap in internet and technology access that prohibits people from participating in vital parts of society. You probably only need to take a quick look at your own community or your own household to determine the extent of the problem. But to give you a sense of the scale, a study from Common Sense Media and the Boston Consulting Group looked at the extent of the digital divide among K-12 students in public schools. During the pandemic, it found 16 million students were living in the digital divide. The problem is most prevalent among Black, Latinx, and Native American students and rural communities.
When you've got a fourth grader sitting in front of a screen trying to engage in class, if it's going out or if it's dropping and it's not working, there's only so many times that fourth grader is going to log in again and try again. It's already really frustrating to an adult, but it can really stop that day's worth of education in its tracks.
The pandemic has changed awareness of the digital divide. The pandemic has helped folks to realize it's not just an availability issue and that mobile phones are insufficient. Those are probably two of the biggest misconceptions that we've been trying to fight. And the pandemic has brought that to folks' attention. When the pictures are circulating of kids doing their homework in a parking lot outside Taco Bell or wherever, all of hearts break. We're like, what? How can that be?
Short-term solutions have been like hotspots, can be really helpful to be able to make sure that somebody who isn't connected is connected, especially if somebody is mobile and is experiencing homelessness. All of those types of more mobile solutions obviously will make more sense. But then you've got to layer on top the effectiveness of that particular technology. Can it work in a shelter? Do you have the right infrastructure footprint to give them the connectivity that's promised through that hotspot? So it really depends on the details of where that person is located and what's sort of the footprint of connectivity in that geographic location. One of the things that's concerning, obviously, for vulnerable communities, when you're in the digital divide, it means that you don't have access to remote work. It's harder for you to access job postings and potential job listings. It's difficult to effectively engage in education or any kind of retraining. It's difficult to engage with any social services or other government services. And it's difficult to participate in civic life and civic participation. And then on top of that, for the community that surrounds them, when you can't reach your vulnerable populations within your community, it is harder to serve your community. For government that's seeking different ways to more effectively deliver a government service or a program to a community in need, the internet is not an option.
Some companies, like Comcast, have pledged to increase internet speeds to accommodate the needs of our new reality. But it might not be enough. That's because there are a lot of factors that go into a steady internet connection. Because of underinvestment and coverage gaps by internet service providers, these factors can be especially problematic for people in low-income areas. The government's official broadband benchmark is 25 megabytes per second download and 3 megabytes per second upload. That number establishes how much data a person can send and receive per second. 25.3 is technically adequate for a typical family, even while remote learning. It turns out video conferencing doesn't actually require that much bandwidth. But people who work in the digital equity space see that benchmark as the bare minimum. It's helpful to think of a network's upload and download speeds, its Mbps, like lanes on a freeway. Typically, there are more lanes for downloading than for uploading. That's become a problem recently because cloud-based services upload and download data at the same time. Internet service providers and regulators have typically focused on download speeds. But more and more tools that we use online, from Google Docs to Zoom, are cloud-based. That means a typical user needs greater upload speeds, which haven't historically been the focus. And that's not the only issue. When thinking about the internet as a freeway, there's also the matter of latency. Latency is the time it takes for data to transfer. Think of it like the speed limit, but lower latency means quicker responsiveness. The distance a piece of data has to travel from a person's home to their internet hub, how well maintained those physical connections are, and how efficient of a route data has to travel from point A to point B, all affect a person's internet experience. If any of these factors are subpar, it contributes to higher latency, which is a lag in response time between inputting a command and getting a response. Other factors impact latency too, like congestion. The more people there are in a home using the same network, the more demands there are on the network and the slower it will be. That's true for people in the same building or neighborhood who might all be relying on the same infrastructure. Multiple Wi-Fi signals in a dense area can also cause interference, messing up the Wi-Fi signal. Additionally, the equipment a household receives from their internet service provider, as well as the physical layout of a home, like brick or concrete walls, can make or break a connection. So, what can be done about the many barriers to a reliable internet connection? One of the first issues to solve is upload speeds. The FCC has indicated that it supports looking into raising the federal minimum Mbps standards. If it does, it will be important to focus on upload speeds too. A few senators called for the federal standard to be set at 100 megabytes per second upload and download in a letter to the Biden administration in early March. Internet providers like Comcast can also increase their upload speeds and easier solve problems than some other needed fixes. To address latency issues, for example, we also need to see major improvement to broadband infrastructure. Across the country, internet service providers have woefully underinvested in infrastructure in Black and brown neighborhoods, rural areas, and most especially rural areas populated by people of color. In these areas, people might pay for a lower cost internet service, so they technically have a connection. However, it's built on an outdated or inefficient backbone. Finally, there's the issue of getting physical hardware into low-income households, which many of these programs don't guarantee. Internet service providers could give their customers high-quality modems and routers, and more education about how to optimize a congested Wi-Fi network.